Well, this is what you don't want to see, is another significant NBA player managing an injury, and this time it is Jimmy Butler, who had a meniscus scare that he hopes will result in him being back around the postseason. Jimmy Butler's a very big deal for this Minnesota team, which is an obvious statement, but I think it's worth talking about. The impact that he makes on both sides of the floor. Of course, he's one of the best two-way players in the league. I think he's been Minnesota's best player this season. Let's talk about it. Well, he leads the team in usage rate. He leads the team in minutes per game as well as shots per game. He's the team leader on and off the floor. If he's not the primary ball handler on this team, then he's definitely number 2 behind Jeff Teague. And Butler has really been one of the better players in the NBA, especially over the last month or so, as the Minnesota T-Wolves have really gone to a different level. I mean, they're like 5th in the league in offense. And when you look at some of his recent performances, it's clear that he's a very big reason for all this. He's had multiple 30-point games. He had a 38-point performance versus the Bulls, 35 against the Cavaliers, 30 against the Pelicans. He's had some big assist games. He's been averaging over 5 assists, and he nearly hit 10 a couple of times recently this month. He's just done it all for the Minnesota T-Wolves this season. And it's going to be pretty tough for them to manage just not having that there. So let's talk about potentially some things that could fall off for them, as well as some opportunities that are opening up for the other guys on this team, even if it will be tough to replace Jimmy Butler, of course. I mean, this team has offensive talent, okay? Jeff Teague is a quality enough point guard who can make plays for others, create some of his own offense. Karl Anthony Towns is one of the best offensive centers in the NBA. And I think you probably look at Towns first, and you see plays that Taj Gibson can make. You see plays that Jamal Crawford can still make off the bench. I think Karl Anthony Towns could really be not necessarily the facilitator because he's not a big assist guy, but he could be the guy that the offense really runs through without Jimmy Butler. Because, I mean, of course, Towns, he can hit from outside, he can hit from inside, and then it could allow the rest of these guys to just do their thing. But we also need to talk about the defense, and I should mention before I really go into defense, Andrew Wiggins, of course, will be getting more shot attempts and all that for these guys. But the defense is going to be scary here because they were already one of the worst defensive teams in the league. Even if they had a recent spurt where they were better, the majority of this season, it's been really tough for them. And Jimmy Butler, even with all the minutes he's been playing, he has not been able to make up for Towns just still not really being there on defense, and Wiggins still hasn't figured it out, and Jeff Teague isn't the best. So, depending on the drop-off on offense, if there is one at all, if it's substantial, if Towns or Wiggins just really goes to a different level without Butler, if the offense doesn't improve enough, then the defense could end up being this team's downfall, with Butler missing a set amount of games, because the Western Conference is very tight, and you can go on just a little rough streak, and that can be the difference between you being the 3 seed, I believe they are right now, or excuse me, number 4. They're tied with San Antonio, if you want to get technical. You can go from number 4 to number 7 in like 2 games. I mean, the OKC Thunder, who are number 7, are only 2 games out from the T-Wolves. So it's going to be tough. Jimmy Butler would be there to defend the other team's best player in the big moments. I can't think of another wing defender on this team who's close to what Butler was. More responsibility for Andrew Wiggins defensively, sure. Maybe Jamal Crawford can still at least be a body on defense. Who knows? It's going to be interesting, man, but I definitely fear that we could be seeing the T-Wolves' very good season start to see a bit of a decrease without Jimmy Butler on both sides of the floor. But I think some other things we can talk about, one of them is Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones has actually been one of the better bench players in the NBA this season, and he's made the T-Wolves better whenever he's been in the game. the lineup of Tyus Jones replacing Jeff Teague has been really good for them all year. I think part of that is because Jones doesn't really need the ball in his hand all the time. He can shoot threes and play off ball, and if the ball ends up in his hands, he can still make a play happen. So that puts the ball in Jimmy Butler's hands a little bit more. It puts it in Andrew Wiggins' hands a little bit more. It allows Towns to have a few more post-ups a game. And, I mean, nothing against Jeff Teague, because he's a fine point guard, offensively at least, but I do think sometimes he has a few possessions where he's in the pick and roll or he's in an isolation on a switch, and it can work sometimes, but I also think there are those few possessions where it's like, you know, just dumping the ball off to Towns right now would probably be better for these guys. And an interesting thing with Towns is there have been some games where Towns has shot the ball at an alarmingly low clip. I mean, he's had games where he's attempted under 10 shots. I mean, here are some games for you that happened recently. Against the Raptors, he attempted 7 shots. Same thing against the Clippers. Same thing against, once again, the Raptors later on. Against the Bulls, he only attempted 8 shots. The game against the Lakers, he only shot the ball 9 times. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns should be shooting the thing a lot because he can do whatever you want out of a center. He's one of the best post-up players in the league. Even just against opposing bigs, doesn't even have to be on a switch. Of course, he can go off the dribble. If he gets a rebound, he can bring it up floor himself. Pick and pops, pick and rolls, just simple isolation sometimes. Mid-range, he's excellent. Like, everybody knows this with Towns. So we should be seeing him getting some more shots up with Butler out. And from a scoring standpoint, I think you'll be fine. Towns does not have Jimmy Butler's playmaking abilities. Not to say he's a bad passer, but I do think you can get away with leaving guys open against Towns. He's getting better at that stuff, but I don't think he's where you would like him to be yet. Only 22, so that's cool. But the other thing with Towns is the defense, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. I mean, Thibodeau has played him with Jimmy Butler and Taj Gibson for a large chunk of the minutes this year, and I think that's pretty much your only way to make up for Towns' lack of defense. And now with Jimmy Butler out, it just gets more difficult. So the best objective for these T-Wolves might be just to go all offense while Butler is out. I mean, I'm not saying you can't at least still try on defense, but I'm just looking at the roster and I'm trying to see, like, how do you try to make up for what Butler did on defense, at least somewhat, right? I mean, maybe Wiggins could just take this opportunity and just be better, but between Shabazz Muhammad, Marcus Georges Hunt, and Jamal Crawford, I'm just not seeing that wing defender who can do that. So it's going to be tough. Now, they started Bjelica last night against the Bulls, so maybe that's their answer here for the other starter. That does give you a bigger lineup with Towns at center, Gibson, and then I guess Bjelica is really acting as your 3. I mean, he can move pretty well. I do think he's a natural 4, but he can at least space the floor out to where you just got more shooting. We'll see if that can hold up. Maybe Jamal Crawford will have to go in there just so you can have like an actual like other wing player, because of course Bjelica is more of a 4, but just gotta see, man. But I do like the idea that Thibodeau's going with there of just screw it, let's go offense. And Bjelica's been knocking down his threes this season, so I guess we're just gonna see what Towns and Wiggins and these guys are really made of. Because Jimmy Butler has been the leader of this team, and the way he fit in early on but then took control of the team as the year went along, I think that was good for them, and now it's just going to shake them up a little bit. So we'll see what they do. And they don't have a lot of room for error in the West, so Tom Thibodeau might be yelling a lot, even more so than he's already yelled for his entire career as a coach. Anyway, that's going to do it. Jimmy Butler, T-Wolves, and I'm done.